we will jump straight in. So you finished the program, but kind of quite a while ago. So we have to go back in both of our memories because we probably officially finished probably almost 6 months ago, but we didn't get a chance to do the interview. And so we're kind of working backwards now. I wanted to start with just what you were experiencing before you reached out to me, and then also how you found out about me. So yeah, what was going on for you? What were you trying to fix?
Yeah, so when I was pregnant with my first child, Freddie, when I was about maybe 20 weeks, I don't actually remember now, started to get the pubic symphysis pain. And then nothing really gave me any relief in pregnancy. So I was seeing physios, myos, osteos, wearing a belt, just limiting my walking. I couldn't really walk. I could walk down the street, but that was about it.
Yeah.
And lots of rest, which was easy to do with one child. So, and then everyone was just saying it will go once once you give birth. And also don't worry about giving birth with the pain. It won't impact it kind of thing. And also just my physio was saying make sure you had a lot of rest post-birth to really recover, give it time to settle, etc. So it did go post-birth for probably about 3 months. And then Freddie was a crappy sleeper, so I was having to walk in lots. And then I started to get it a little bit again. I got released in my my groin, and that helped. And then it picked back up at about 6 months. And then it was just chronic. So I think so that would have been November. I feel like I saw you November the next year.
You'd been sore for a long time. And also we touched base and you were umming and ahhing and trying to work out whether you could do the program or not for quite a while too. So we spoke, and then we spoke another 3 or 4 months later. You reached back out again,
true.
I think.
So then what happened was I was talking to my girlfriend, and she had listened to a birth story with Zoe Foster Blake, and she had this pain during pregnancy, and she recommended an osteo. So then I started seeing her, and she would treat my pelvic floor. And then she got me to have an X-ray to see if I had changes on the pubic bone. And then I got the diagnosis of osteitis pubis, and that's what led me to you. So before then, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then on the back of that was that Robert, my partner, had seen this guru massage guy for osteitis pubis that all the footy players saw, but he's retired. So then I was looking for a massage guy, and you were coming up because you live near, your address on your website was near me. So I was like, great, I'll just go get a massage from you. And then I had seen that Cale Hooker had written a review, and I had a contact with him. So I contacted him to see that you were legit. Yeah. Because that was the other thing. Making sure you're legit.
Yeah.
And then I reached out, undenied about it for ages, and then I was like, what have I got to lose? Spoke to you, and then we begun. Is that a good kind of explanation?
Yeah, that's a great overview. So essentially, some of the terms that we use there might not be as familiar. So osteitis pubis, you had essentially pelvic sort of groiny pain that came up during the pregnancy. Saw lots of people. It sounds like, and I didn't remember this, it sounds like you went quite a long time seeing people before you had any real clarity as to what was, or you had a diagnosis or a label that you could even start to poke around.
Yeah, I had said to one of the physios, what about osteitis pubis? And she kind of pushed it aside. And then I just had no help with physios whatsoever. And it wasn't until the osteo that she was a bit of symptom relief, but also kind of got me in the right direction, even though it wasn't the thing that helped, really, but it is what led me to you.
Yeah, it's a condition that I used to do, as you know, a lot of work in. And what you found when you said you found the website with the massage stuff local, I had my old clinic website that was being very neglected because I wasn't practicing much anymore. I was doing this program, but I had a bunch of really old and what I would call kind of embarrassing pages up with content talking about what OP is and how to solve it. And they'd been up for 5 or 6 years, and I kind of forgot they were there. But I had, you reached out and found me through that. A few other people did. And so then we met. and we started on the program after a bit of backwards and forwards. Do you remember when you had a connection to Cale Hooker, was a professional AFL player that I used to work with, who gave me that testimonial. Do you remember what you were expecting? So you'd worked out I was legit, but you probably hadn't necessarily bought into like it's definitely going to work or whatever. Do you remember what you were expecting in terms of how the program was going to run? You know, what you thought was going to be involved? Because obviously there wasn't really any massage. Like what were you? I know we're going back a long time, but what were you expecting?
Definitely different to what it was. I think I was, which we talk about in the program. You know how. And I've been seeing a physio or osteos and stuff, since I was 18. So a lot, and my brother's a physio. So I think I was expecting, okay, I was already doing like clams and crab walks and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, he's going to give me more of that, but in a more specific sequence, maybe. I'd seen something about deadlifting but double leg, so I thought maybe something like that. And then I think maybe also massage. And then when I found out what the program was, I was like, oh, okay.
So you weren't too fussed with what it was.
I guess it was more older. Yeah, older. Kind of already what I was doing, but maybe with a few extra exercises that I hadn't thought of, or like a specific way to do it, or a sequence or something like that. I think that's what I maybe thought.
Yeah, cool. I ask these questions sometimes. You get a very broad array of answers, right? Sometimes people are really expecting massage. Sometimes people are really expecting X, Y, or Z. It's always, I think, so you've done a bunch of isolation stuff. So for you, I think instinctively you sort of knew that there was a strength component to it. Is that fair to say? Did you feel like it was a strengthening solution as opposed to cortisone, or you've got a bit of a medical background through work, but like, were you thinking that this is something where you have to do it yourself and get stronger, or did you have other ideas about what might be wrong or might need to happen for you to get past the pain?
I don't know. I think because Cale had messaged me and said, I could probably find the message. I should have done that beforehand.
Expect to do training or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he kind of said something. And then when I talked to you, maybe on our consult phone, you'd said maybe that there's 4 main exercises or something. So already it was like, okay, this is going to be different. I'd already looked into the cortisone. I'd already looked into massage. I mean, that's how I found you. I was looking for a massage.
Yeah.
But then you made me totally rethink all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Do you remember what were this with? I guess it's sort of like when you say rethinking, what sort of things were you trying to? What were the surprises? I guess if you can remember, what were the changes in how you were viewing your body, or viewing what was actually going on with it?
The isometric stuff, which you do in Pilates and physios and stuff like that. So that's definitely how I was trying to treat it. So changing your thoughts about that, changing your thoughts about how often you need physio and massage and everything like that. I mean, I still like it and I still get it, but more as a supplement.
Yeah.
Is how I'd kind of think of it now. And I'm also aware of their language that they use, especially for me, which we can go into a bit later, but my pain lingered and stuff. So I don't want them to tell me that something's going to be 12 weeks away, or, this could maybe not get better or it gets worse. But, I'd just give me a bit of treatment. Don't tell me anything about it in a way, release my glutes so I can do exercises better, but I don't want much talking about, okay, this is what needs to kind of go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I do want to so I reckon I know what you're talking about, and I think I was really excited for this interview because you and I had a bit of an atypical pathway through the process. But I think what you're hinting at there probably is worth us trying to unearth a little bit more, which is, you mentioned that, the way that you were spoken to. So you were a person who was probably really cusping on what we would call becoming kind of like a chronic pain patient in the very structured medical context, where they stop talking about solutions and they start talking about coping strategies and central sensitization and, relationships with pain and things like that. And one of the things that you and I worked through a lot was the fact that, at the time that I met you, I inherited you in that sort of, the state that you were in, for lack of a better word. You had lost a lot of confidence. You were really very concerned about making it worse. There was that sort of sense of, I think, fragility that I say the medical community often instills in people. Don't you dare lift that. This will take this amount of time. Very weak here, very tight there. And
100%.
if I'm right, that's sort of what you're hinting at, which is that you have found, or like connected the dots now looking backwards, and how a lot of those, ultimately well-meaning interactions with health professionals had helped build that narrative in your head that there was something wrong with your body or something wrong with you. And you've since gone, you know what, seeing these practitioners is helpful and I feel good. My nervous system calms down. I get the treatment. But if I have too many of those conversations where they start to steer me towards their kind of mindset around bodies and healing, that you almost can see that as being like a piece of string pulling you in a direction that's not a helpful one for you. Is that kind of what you mean?
Yes, definitely. And I've just actually remembered that I think when I reached out to you and then denied a few reasons, but one of them also was when I found you, I also found the osteo. So I was like, okay, I'll give her a chance.
Yeah.
Because I know she had worked for some women and that they were fixed. And then at the same time, the physio that I was seeing, so there was too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. And I said, do you remember me saying that on the call? Like, you got too many cooks in the kitchen. You like focus on one of them and do it really well and see if it works for you before you come back. That was part of our convo.
She had talked about amitriptyline, which is like an antidepressant, but it is a neuromodulator and it's used in chronic pain. So I was umming and ahhing about going on that to see if I could help undo the chronic pathways that I'd like most likely done with having this chronic pain, because it must have been 2 years of pain, because we're at like 3 now. So that does remind me. There was things that I was like, I'll try this, and then nothing was working, and then I was like, okay, I've got nothing to lose. Let's give it a go.
Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that, because I think that's one of the things that you and I tried to work through, because you had an immediate positive reaction to the training, but you didn't have an immediate, oh my God, all my symptoms are gone, like a lot of people do. It wasn't a super quick, oh my goodness, this is working. But there were really strong signs that we were on the right path. And for me, that's always enough, as long as we can point to objective ways in which we can see that your body is thriving. And so we naturally did gravitate towards some of those conversations, and we talked through the different schools of thought around chronic pain and chronic pathways. And there are a lot of different ideas around this. There's a very popular one in the modern Western world at the moment, which is like nociceptors and pain sensitization. And this idea that if you've been in pain for a while, your body just kind of learns to reproduce that and it kind of keeps going. And I personally don't really subscribe to it, which is, controversial in some circles, but I've been practicing a long time and I've never really seen that pathway be anything other than disempowering and anything other than kind of intangibly. It's very hard to kind of attach to a part of it and be like, this makes sense for these reasons in a personal context. But what I have seen a lot of, and what I often bounce people out to, is to explore the emotional connections, the psychological connections around pain. And so we very much sort of talked about that all the way through. And even at one point I sort of suggested, like, we can look at this as well as a separate kind of a project. We can do our strength training and our sort of the model and the education piece. But actually, hey, Bridge, I think, it might be worth you going and having a couple of conversations with someone that's doing this much more pointedly. And for me, I said to you, I meet those patients semi-regularly because of the work that I do, where I'll have a half an hour chat, like we did a screening call at the start of it. And I'll be like, I think this is not primarily a mechanical issue. Like, I think you'll get a lot more benefit. But with you, I never got that sense because of the way that you interacted. You did all your work. You were really diligent. You were a great patient. And I just never quite got the sense that you were in that camp where I thought it was, predominantly a psychosomatic kind of an experience. I'm kind of curious. You did go and explore some of that at one point, and you kind of got some value out of it, but also kind of came back to the idea that you felt strength for you, but just on a personal level, was maybe more significant. Do you remember that kind of what that was like for you to try and work that out and to be exposed to those ideas and look at them? Like, how did that feel?
Yes. So I saw a pain, it's not a psychologist, but a pain something that you'd recommended her. Um, and it's good, but it's kind of black and white in the other way. And yes, I think it is a bit disempowering in the same way that maybe physio and stuff is, that it's like, well, don't do this exercise until you get this right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, here's another like obstacle I got to get over to be pain free, which is kind of another roadblock for me, I guess.
Yeah, understood.
Haven't had a huge success with it. There's been some like interesting points, but I don't know. It's too hard for me to say that this is purely in my head, because I have had a good response to doing strength work with you as well.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of want to go
in my head. I mean, that's probably not the right way to frame it either.
I think that's fine. So I guess so that, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but we decided we would just extend your program because neither of us were particularly happy with where you got to at the end of the 8 weeks. And I said, let's just keep working together. And actually, I might ask, how did that feel at that moment? Like, what was that like for you? Was that interesting, like, to get towards that 8 week and for me to say, let's just keep going? Like, what were you feeling at the time?
Relief that you'd keep going with me.
Yeah.
But yes, it was good. Like, you were just like, I think you've gotten to a stage where you think shit, it hasn't worked, and probably panicked about it. So let's just take that away. I'll stick with you and let's keep on going. So yeah, it was a total relief. Well, I think I probably would have kept on going with the program and doing it myself, just having you there. We got some new exercises in.
Yeah.
We were meeting once a week, basically, still for ages, and then it kind of went to every 2 weeks, which is perfect. So it's just like another extra support because, yeah, as you said, it wasn't that 8 weeks where you normally have people that have maybe been pain-free for 2 weeks by then.
Yeah, it's certainly. So the structure of the program, like obviously you can message me every day if you want to, and you and I did quite a lot of that initially. But the structure of the program, as far as I'm concerned, like the reason I only take 1 or 2 people a month is like I genuinely want people to get better. And if you're not better in 8 weeks, it's like, within as long as I see you're doing the work and I think it's still useful, then we just decide to keep going. And that's really joyful for me to have that ability as well. Like to just be like, don't worry, let's keep looking at it. But it did, like the first few people that I took through the program, I did notice, because I kind of throw a dart and I say 8 weeks, right? But like 9, 7, 12, like 8 weeks makes sense to me to cover all the content and get really good runs on the board. And for most people, by about week 2 or 3, they're like, oh shit, like this is going to work. And then they obviously have to keep going even past the 8 weeks. They have to keep working on their strength. But there's definitely like a 6-week panic mode, I think, that people get where they go, oh, like let's say they're 90% better or 10% better, whichever. But there's still a sense of like, oh, I've only got 2 more weeks. And if I'm not 100% better now, what if I'm not? And they start to panic. And because that distress and pain sensitivity is so deeply interlinked, it kind of spirals out. And so, yeah, that's the conversation we had of like, don't worry about it. Just put that aside. Let's just keep working. And so, yeah, it was a real pleasure to kind of be able to do that. And ultimately where we arrived at, I mean, so how old was Freddie when we met? Was he a year old or close to?
Yeah, I reckon he was 1 and a little bit.
Yeah, and so your biggest goal...
it was November, so yeah, 1 and a bit.
And so you had a pain-free goal for you, but your other pain-free goal was specifically to?
Have another baby, which we're there.
Yeah, which we're there.
19 weeks.
Yeah, and so what was interesting about it was I think your goal to me, like obviously you were motivated towards it, that was very clearly the like, this went really badly with my first pregnancy. I really want to expand the family and I don't want to go through that again. And so what was interesting was we had one thing we were looking at was like, where's the pain? That ultimately started to really decrease and your ability to do things ultimately really increased. But in the background, there was the sort of the confidence to go through that process again, right? And so for you, it was, is it fair to say that you got to more or less pain-free for large stints and it's kind of fluctuated a little bit? Like do you remember going back like when we stopped working formally together? Was that like a more or less totally pain-free for an extended period?
And it was maybe a niggle if I'd go for a walk, but it wouldn't stop me going for long walks or anything like that, where previously it would.
Yeah, and I think that's like the interpersonal thing where people, and obviously people are probably watching this um, at some point in the future, there's this real sense of like pain-free or nothing, right? Like zero pain is a success and anything else is not a success, which is where we naturally go to when we've got that sort of relief mindset where we used to like,
Yeah.
I pay for my appointment and I want to be pain-free afterwards and hopefully that sticks. But
Yeah.
ultimately, with people that have gone through a process and they have those underlying relationships with pain, what we sometimes arrive at is I can do all the things I want to do within the extent that I'm willing to invest in my ability to do them, as in I've gotten strong enough to do them all. And every now and then my body decides to fall back into that old pattern where that pain thing says, hey, hello, you know, like, I'm still
Yeah.
here kind of thing. And then really like the longer term success is like, what do you do in those moments? Do you catastrophize? Do you stop moving?
Yeah.
Or do you acknowledge and say, oh yeah, hello, old friend, and keep going? And so I guess you got the confidence that you were pretty much pain-free. You knew you had some niggles that would come up every now and then, you managed them. And then you became pregnant and you're in the process of that now. Do you remember the, I mean, it's more recent than our program, but like, what was that like navigating early pregnancy with the pain and the memories of that? Like, was that easy to do, hard to do? What was that like?
It was okay. I mean, the first 12 weeks I was sick, so I did no exercise. And then it was on my head being like, you have to get back into these exercises
Yeah.
because otherwise the pain will hit around about the same time. And you talk to people like, I had it and it's so much worse in the second pregnancy, or some people are like, it doesn't mean you're gonna have it in the second pregnancy, blah
Yeah.
blah blah. But I also wanted to stay strong for myself and to have another baby, and like I didn't have much strength going on with when I had Freddie. But I did my back lots when I had him and all this sort of stuff. So just wanted to stay strong and stuff anyway. And also what I was thinking about was before with the pain going back and forth, which you go through in the program of like how, how much weight you're going through when you're walking versus running. Also just going, okay, we got to the point where I was doing running with you and I could run pain free. Yet sometimes when I walk small amounts, I'd get pain.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah.
not really making too much sense. Like that's what kind of made me think maybe it's a bit of a mix of a bit in my head, bit what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
I think the having enough baseline kind of confidence, for lack of a better word, or feeling secure, right? Because when we've been sore for a long time, we feel vulnerable. We don't know what the fuck's going on. We don't know when it's going to go away. Is this my life forever? Like there's a bunch of insecurities that float around the fact that it's not just pain, it's what the pain means to you. And then I think if I play back what I just heard a little bit, you'd gotten to a point where you were feeling fundamentally calmer about the whole situation. And that let you look at some experiences side by side and say, these don't make perfect sense to me. Like my pain's gone away. I've gotten stronger. I can lift weights now and I can even run and that feels good. But then I'm still getting a weird pain signal when walking. But I understand that the load for running and the load for walking, like if it was a vulnerability, like surely it should be. And that let you have a bit of a window to say, there's clearly some kind of psychological relationship with the pain and maybe some stuff in the background. But overall, whether it's there or not, if I get stronger and I do more stuff, that seems to be the path to success, right? Like that seemed to be the logical way forward.
Yeah, cool. Definitely.
Okay, so you were sore for 2-ish years from this like middle of the first pregnancy through to afterwards. We met after you'd had a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You tried a bunch of different things. You were unbelievably diligent with your rehab. So I'll say it was a pleasure working with you on that because you did so much of it and did it so well. And even when you were having downtimes, you never hung shit on me. Like you never put that on me. You always took responsibility. And so it was a real like pleasure to, and it's part of why I was so happy to just extend the program. But if we look back, so 2 years of soreness, we started the program. Within 8 weeks, you had some benefits but weren't better. Do we think it was about 4 to 5 months that you really felt on top of it? Like when do you think that moment was when you're like, no, I do think I've got it from here?
I was running lots. I could go for runs. It was more like I'd stop because I'm unfit, not because I was sore. And it was kind of like we'd got onto double split legs as well. Yeah. It was kind of like I had then the confidence that I was strong, which I'd never had any confidence that I was strong. before this program because the physios and the osteos tell you a week and don't do this and don't do that, where you were like, you can do anything. You know what I mean? Like you can go and run or do whatever exercise you want. You've got the base strength. So I think it was a huge confidence thing for me, and also sticking to a program I'd never done before. So there was lots of things going on to then get to the stage where you were like, yep, you're in a good spot. A few niggles every now and then, but as you said, could do basically everything that I wanted to do. And if there was a flare up or anything, we had like a management plan to do, because I did have some flare ups or like some pain going in different spot, and you treated me once, like actual physical massage once. Or, we're doing the deadlifts and then I hurt a part of my glute, and then normally I just give up and not do exercise for a few weeks.
I remember that.
And I was like, okay. Then we had some other little things that we did and we kept on going, and it was just, I think confidence was huge.
Yeah, I remember that as a practitioner. I guess you kind of just go back to your experience. And as I said, I never got the sense with you that that it was a primarily psychosomatic thing. And you, like, when it is for people, they tend to present in a certain way, often with similar personality types. And it's not negative for them at all. Like, it's not a reflection that they're a bad person. There's just certain, and there's been a lot of writing about this and a lot of different practitioners over the years, there's certain personality types that when they encounter the medical profession, there's a clash there that tends to end up with them careening down a chronic pain pathway. And it's often about people who are like type A people who really like to learn, who like to do things diligently, because they do all their rehab and they're still not better. And so they assume logically, like, I must be really busted because I've done it and it hasn't helped. And so long story short, I really never got that sense with you. And we had a bunch of conversations where I was sort of like, I want to expose Bridget to this, but I think we're on the right pathway. And I really just want permission to kind of keep going in that direction. And so when you mentioned the treatment, there was a point at which you had this sort of roving niggle, and I started to go on my end. I'm like, what is it? And so, I was like, Bridget, can we just get you on a treatment table? Can I just literally get my thumb in there and work out where you're sore and what's going on?
Yeah.
And we did that a couple of times, and we worked out it was sort of high hamstring stuff. But ultimately, both of us just together, and I think all good rehab is collaborative. We both sort of had this conversation, just went, let's just keep going. This feels really right. Let's just keep going with the training. And let's see where we get to. And I think that's something that we both had an instinct together to go that direction.
Yeah.
And in reality, what happened was you just needed a little bit of extra time, and you needed to be able to connect those dots for yourself as well with the running versus walking. And then, we got to the point where you felt confident to be like, let's go and expand the family. So I think, I guess what I'm trying to say is it was a really interesting process for me as well.
Yeah,
where we got
to
kind of,
I could be of service.
but I'm like happy to say it, like, and again, because you were so calm in terms of your interactions with me and you were so diligent, you made it very easy to do that. So there's a bit of a thank you in there as well, that we got to do that together and get you to that result over a slightly longer period. Because the 8 weeks again is kind of 9 weeks, 7 weeks. Again, it's just trying to create enough time for a person to really learn and to try and experiment and to reflect. And I think the fact that we needed a little bit of extra time for you was not even really a reflection of anything being that wrong. It was just every person is different. And this process is, in the modern world, we think of it very like physio, specialist, button-up shirt, lots of time at uni, big fancy Latin words and scan results and stuff. But fundamentally, the process that you and I got to go through, and that I'm grateful for as a practitioner, is a process of healing, for lack of a better word. And it's a process of learning and reflecting. And, however long that takes people, the most important thing is that we just arrive at the point where our relationship with our body is back intact. Yeah. And I think a lot of what happened with you was not that your body was busted. It was those interactions with the healthcare profession that you had sort of absorbed that language.
You've got to undo it.
Yeah, you've got to unlearn a bunch of stuff.
Undo all the stuff that you've been told for years, really.
Yeah, and it's hard, and it takes bravery too, because the last thing you want, and I remember you umming and ahhing about doing the program. There's the cost, there's the time, but you also, just on a human level, we never want to feel silly for putting our faith in someone else, or feel silly for thinking that it's possible. Do you know what I mean? There's always a sense checking thing that we have to do as well. And so, yeah, I think that undoing the harm of the medical profession, if anyone hasn't looked into this, the language that doctors and things use is, it's not coming from a negative place, but the words have meaning.
I pick it up all the time now when I talk to my friends, seeing specialists and stuff, and I hear what they say, and I'm like, oh, it just puts such a negative spin on it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think in the interest of this not going forever, I think this has been really helpful. So I'm really appreciative of you sharing some of what you've gone through, and it's amazing that you're doing so well now, obviously. I'm stoked, and we'll keep staying in contact, of course. But yeah, I think on that note, we can probably sign off there if there's nothing else you want to add to the interview.
No, just thank you. It was the best. I think, my two main things are like confidence, sticking to it, and then ultimately having a lot less pain. Like, that's huge.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much for your time, Bridget. I'll talk to you soon. We'll sign off there, okay?
All right, thanks, Matt. Bye.
Bye.